Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to completely re-examine literally everything you thought you knew about the magical origins of human creativity. Seriously, we are tracing this fascinating, ancient historical thread that connects 4,000-year-old royalty directly to the exact way you and I write today. And, well, it dramatically redefines our relationship with modern artificial intelligence.
But before we get into the actual nuts and bolts, ask yourself this honestly profound question. Think about the books sitting on your shelf right now. Every single one has a specific name attached to it, right? But for thousands of years, humans just passed down myths and carved these massive, anonymous epics into stone without anyone ever taking credit. So, who broke the mold? Who actually invented the whole concept of claiming a text as their own? Because the answer totally flips our modern assumptions about what it actually means to be a creator.
Here is our roadmap for today's journey. We'll start with the solitary genius myth, meet the ancient weavers of words, uncover the etymology of text, examine AI's statistical smoothies, and finally look at the record of sweat.
Starting off with Section 1, the solitary genius myth.
To really understand our modern anxiety about AI just coming in and replacing us, we first have to deconstruct this massive 18th century illusion. For centuries, we've been taught to kind of worship this concept of creation ex nihilo. It's this false, romantic-era belief that an isolated, heroic genius just conjures brilliant ideas out of absolute nothingness. You know, we naturally picture someone locked away in a room, hunching over a desk, creating magic from thin air. But historically, that's just incredibly inaccurate. Creativity has almost always been this highly collaborative, combinatorial process of remixing existing cultural threads. And a particular quote from 1759 by a writer named Elvard Young brilliantly illustrates exactly when that myth started spreading like wildfire. He framed creation as spontaneous, unassisted natural growth, basically comparing an original work to a vegetable. He pushed this idea that a true genius just grows a flower from their own roots, completely divorced from past influence or mechanical labor. But as you'll see, the ancients viewed it very differently.
Which brings us to Section 2, Ancient Weavers of Words.
Let's completely step outside that modern box for a second and travel back over 4,000 years to ancient Mesopotamia. We have to meet an absolute pioneer named Enheduanna. She was an Akkadian princess and a high priestess in the 23rd century BCE, which meant she wielded immense political and spiritual power. But more importantly for this explainer, she is literally the first known named author in world literature.
Now, the absolutely crucial point here is that she didn't view herself as some solitary genius pulling words out of thin air. Not at all. Instead, she proudly described herself as a weaver of tablets. I just love that phrase. She wasn't spinning threads out of her own body like a spider. She was taking the heavy, resistant threads of ancient, established traditions and physically crossing them on her loom in completely unprecedented ways to create something new. Let's move right to Section 3 and see how this ancient metaphor connects to the etymology of text.
Because guys, this weaving metaphor isn't just nice poetry. It is built directly into the literal DNA of the vocabulary we use every single day. Just think about these rapid-fire linguistic connections. They are mind-blowing. The Latin word for text literally translates to woven. The Latin word carmen, which means song, also meant an instrument for carding wool. And the Greek word rhapsode translates to a song sewn together. Think about that. Every time you send a text message, you are literally invoking ancient physical textile labor.
True creation was always a deeply mediated, collaborative chain of custody. It started with divine revelation, moved to the author's physical translation, or weaving, of the language, and then depended entirely on the singer's physical breath for public recitation, and finally, a scribe's careful hand to circulate it. Without the breath of the singer and the hand of the scribe, the author essentially didn't exist.
Fast forward to today, Section 4, and we meet AI statistical smoothies.
Today we face our modern antagonist, the emotionless, automated execution of generative AI. When we strip away all the marketing magic and hype, we see a really stark contrast. A human weaver creates with biological friction, lived experience, and intentional design. We feel joy, we feel grief, we stare down a blank page with actual beating intent. The AI, on the other hand, is basically a wood chipper. It relies entirely on probabilistic guessing and emotionless execution, with incredibly lossy data processing. It doesn't comprehend a single word.
Because here's the reality. 80 to 90% of modern AI compute cycles are essentially just lossy hardware approximations. It literally guesses math to prioritize breakneck speeds. And to do that, continuous human ideas are fractured into arbitrary discrete chunks, meaning the exact data provenance, the original path of the data, is permanently destroyed. It acts exactly like a giant blender, grinding up real human labor into these untraceable statistical smoothies.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, the record of sweat.
So, if the machine is just a giant blender causing what experts call an automated miasma, how do we, as creators, establish undeniable truth and control? Well, you have to apply something called protortion. Protortion is the proactive, painstaking manual steering required to map your human vision onto reality with high fidelity. You are actively rejecting algorithmic distortion. You can't just kick back and let it run. You have to roll up your sleeves and force that rigid hardware to obey your exact, deterministic intent step by step.
And this intense, deliberate physical steering generates a literal record of sweat. In a digital world just absolutely flooded with automated noise, this acts as immutable, cryptographic proof. It proves like actual metabolic human energy, physical horsepower, and true beating human intent were spent to execute the digital mission. The human pilot provides the intent, the machine merely executes the sweat.
To truly grasp the massive scale of this modern digital curation, consider this recent real-world milestone. This is a measurement of actual metabolic flux across a sovereign digital swarm.
55.5 million tokens. 55.5 million tokens of verified digital sweat standing as a monument to human effort, proving mathematically that a sovereign human pilot was undeniably at the wheel. This staggering number completely redefines your modern role. It proves you aren't just a solitary originator pulling ideas from thin air, but rather the ultimate algorithmic orchestrator. The machine handles the tedious technical execution, sure, but you provide the irreplaceable overarching strategy, the curation, and the actual sweat.
We've moved all the way from the ancient weavers of Mesopotamia straight to the algorithmic orchestrators of today. The machine is simply a deterministic brush waiting for your instructions. The true magic of authorship remains yours entirely. So, the only question left is, how will you twist your own mental kaleidoscope? And what magnificent, uniquely human intent will you choose to weave today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep creating.